Most times when you finish a project, the reward is some satisfaction in your craftsmanship, and usually a little praise. But every now and then, I make a project where the reward is just one big grin. As you can see, this unique Christmas decoration illustrates one absurd result of Santa's insistence that he always enter your home through its chimney. I was shocked when Washington Irving first revealed that in 1809. I watched all the podcasts and quickly became normalized to it. Now I never even questioned why a fat man would slide down a skinny chimney into a burning fire. But hey, the absurdity is what fuels the grin, and the effort it takes to make this grin-inspiring project is relatively easy if you stick to the procedures that I'm about to show you. Ow. By the way, this humorous sculpture was designed by Travis, the brilliant craftsman that mans the other side of that camera in all of these vids. As Travis envisioned it, this was cut from a single block glued up from many different types of woods. I've showed you this before. This is how we made the reindeer and the elves. Using a bandsaw, cut a shape in one surface of the wood. Then tape the scraps back to the block to make it roughly rectangular again. Turn it 90 degrees and cut another shape. And presto, a reindeer. But the block that Santa is cut from requires a good deal more work. Santa and his chimney are made from several different woods to create the impression of boots, pants, bricks, and mortar. So you start by choosing some woods. You don't need much. Travis and I made most of this out of scraps. We used what we think is elm for the base, then cherry and Baltic birch plywood for the bricks and mortar, elm and walnut for the chimney cap, aromatic red cedar for the pants, ash for the boot cuffs, and walnut for the boots. And that's just one possibility. You can use many other wood species as long as they distinguish the parts and suggest what they are. Once you have chosen your woods, make the block. We're going to start by making the bricks and mortar portion of the chimney. Start by cutting 3 lengths of brickwood, in this case cherry, and 2 lengths of mortar, birch plywood. You may want to make these just a little wider than you need so that later you can sand or plane the surfaces flush, or just be very careful that the surfaces are flush when you glue them up. I find the assembly table is perfect for this job. Wink, wink. Once the glue cures, flush up the surfaces, and then we'll cut this piece in half. Then glue the 2 halves together with a piece of mortar plywood in between. After the glue cures, clean up the surfaces if necessary, and then check that you have at least 1 square corner. If you have made the block oversized, shave it down so that it's square and no bigger than 3 inches wide and thick. Cut thick slices from the end of the block. You'll need 4 slices per chimney, and the thickness of each slice should be the thickness of the bricks. As you can see, there is a great deal of table saw blade exposed for this operation. I've set it up as safely as I know how. My fingers get nowhere near the blade, and if the part kicks back, I'm not in the line of fire. However, a great deal of workshop safety is feeling comfortable with the operation. If all of this blade gives you pause, use another tool. You can also do this with a bandsaw, a chop saw, or even a handsaw. Cut squares of the brick plywood to serve as the mortar between each layer of bricks. You'll need 3 squares per chimney. Stack the brick slices and the mortar slices so they look like laid up bricks. Turn every other one of the brick slices 90 degrees from how you cut it from the block, but the grain of the mortar slices should all be oriented in the same direction. The reason for this can be seen in these 2 chimneys. This is the first one we did. We didn't know to pay attention to the orientation of the plywood. As you can see, 1 layer stands out from the other 2 because we're looking at flat grain core on 1 layer and end grain core on the other 2. You want to orient them so they all match. Glue up the slices to make a block and sand or plane the surfaces flush. Set this aside, and we're going to work on the chimney cap. Choose a dark wood, such as this walnut, for the inside of the chimney. Glue 2 strips of lighter wood to the ends of the walnut to make 2 sides, let's say the north and south sides of the cap. Let the glue cure, then cut the glued up parts to size, making all of the parts flush. Glue another set of light wood strips to the east and west side of the chimney, completing the cap. Once again, let the glue cure and sand everything flush. And now we're going to glue up all the parts of the box: base, bricks, chimney cap, pants, boot trim, and boots. Spread the glue on the adjoining surfaces. When the surface is end grain, you may want to apply the glue twice, since end grain wicks up more glue than flat grain. Apply the glue, wait about 10 minutes, and apply it again. Clamp the parts together, keeping the parts well aligned. The stack should come out perfectly rectangular. Clean up the block so that you have smooth surfaces and at least one square corner. Then, trace the front template, the one with the shape of the boots, on the front of the stack. Make sure you trace the template on the stack so that the grain runs through the lengths of the boots. Otherwise, the toes will be weak and may split off. Also, because the true thickness of the plywood you used for the mortar may not be exactly 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters, you may have to fudge this template to make it line up with the wood layers. You can make all of the cuts that I'm about to show you on a bandsaw, but I prefer to make the cuts that define the base and the chimney cap on a table saw. Carefully set the depth of cut and use a fence and a stop to help line up the cuts. Cut all the way around the block. This way, the cuts line up perfectly. But you have to be very careful to properly position the block on the saw. The blade needs to remove all of the chimney layer and slightly cut away some of the base or the chimney cap. If you're not careful, you can leave a little chimney, and this takes a good deal of time to remove by sanding and filing. Now it's time to cut the front shape on the bandsaw. I like to start by cutting the interior between Santa's boots. Be sure to save the scraps, and you may find it helpful to label the parts so you know where they go when you reassemble the block. Tape the scraps back to the block to make it as rectangular as possible. Don't worry about getting the scraps between the legs. They will be too small to mess with. Turn the block 90 degrees and apply the side template, and then cut the side profile. This time you don't have to save the scraps. And after you've finished the second cut and removed all the scraps, you should have something that looks remarkably like Santa stuck in a chimney. Use a very sharp chisel to pare away most of the saw marks. Then sand the surfaces smooth. A strip sander and a rotary tool work very well for this operation. You might also want to stick some sandpaper to a worn-out hacksaw blade. This also works well, especially when sanding between the legs. Once we've made a few of these, Travis and I realized that there is another way to approach this project depending on your preferences. I'm going to mention it here, but I'm not going to walk you all the way through it because it's easy enough to grasp. And that is to make the base, chimney, chimney cap, and legs as separate pieces and then just glue them together. The only part you have to make with a compound cut is the chimney itself. Each method has its advantages. It is much easier to sand this project when it's in pieces, but much harder to get the parts aligned when you put them together. Travis and I had to use some dowels to get everything properly positioned. It all boils down to this. You choose. One of the things I love about woodworking is all the choices it gives you. Once you're done sanding, apply a penetrating finish to bring out the wood colors, and then it's showtime. Time to start collecting those grins. You can get the plans and full-size templates for Santa stuck in the chimney from the Workshop Companion General Store. The links are in the video and in the description. And, as always, thank you for your kind attention.